This was the scene in London on Friday as British police searched the home of the former UK ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson. You can see they got to pull barrels of files there and information. Mandelson is under criminal investigation by the British police after the latest trove of Epstein files revealed that Epstein not only sent the British politician and his husband tens of thousands of British pounds over the years, but that Mandelson appeared to have leaked sensitive government information to Epstein while he was the UK's business secretary, which is basically the British equivalent of the American position of Commerce Secretary. And I'm going to get to that guy in just a moment. But among those alleged leaks is one huge one. Because back in 2009, debt had thrown the economy of Greece into a crisis. And because Greece is in the EU and uses euros, that put the value of euro itself at risk. So in May of 2010, the finance ministers of the governments of the EU agreed to try to avert the crisis from spreading with a 500 billion euro bailout. That's a big one. But the latest tranche of Epstein files appears to show is that Mandelson, who would have been a key figure, of course, in negotiating that deal as their version of the Commerce Secretary, appears to have tipped Epstein off about not just that the deal was going to happen, but exactly when the deal was going to happen. Because the night before the deal, Epstein emailed Mandelson, "Sources tell me 500 billion euro bailout almost complete." Then someone whose name is redacted but appears to be Mandelson replied, "Should be announced tonight." He said he was just leaving 10 Downing Street, which is, of course, the British equivalent of the White House. And as Mandelson said he was leaving Downing Street, he said he would call Epstein. Now, obviously, advanced knowledge of a major government bailout, one that would create huge winners and huge losers in the stock market, is incredibly valuable information. It's the kind of insider trading info that could make someone a fortune. And allegedly revealing that information to Epstein is what Mandelson is now under criminal investigation for. It's why he's been effectively forced to leave the British government altogether. But the thing is, he isn't the only one in hot water over this. This was the cover of the British tabloid, the Daily Express, today. "Resign now, PM on brink as he calls to go mount." As calls go to go mount. There you go. Okay, you could read it yourself. The Prime Minister of England, Keir Starmer, is fighting to keep his job over this scandal. Now, to be clear, Starmer has no personal ties to Epstein that we know of at all. The scandal that has the British public so mad at him that they are trying to oust him from his job is simply that Starmer would not have appointed someone with known ties to Epstein to be the British ambassador to the U.S. in the first place, that he should not have. That's enough for the public in England to say the Prime Minister should go. That's how completely toxic Jeffrey Epstein is in a normal political environment. I mean, even the King of England is now supporting a police investigation into his own brother, the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, over the revelations of his ties to Epstein that have come out in the latest batch of files. Literally, the King of England is supporting a police investigation into his own brother because of how toxic it is to be connected to Jeffrey Epstein in England. Then there is, of course, what is happening here in the United States. I mean, the latest batch of Epstein files also detailed the social and business entanglements Epstein had with Trump Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Now, being associated with Jeffrey Epstein is not a crime. Epstein was a businessman and a creepy version of a socialite. He did business with and socialized with a lot of people, as we now know. But check out how Trump Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick described his relationship to Epstein late last year. I mean, this was Lutnick telling the New York Post about an incident with Epstein, who happened to be Lutnick's next-door neighbor when he visited his house back in 2005.
I say to him, "Massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage?" And he says, "Every day." And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, "And the right kind of massage."
Ooh.
Now, my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, "I'm sorry, we have to go." And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Okay. He was quite the storyteller there. I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. That is how Lutnick described his decision to cut ties with Jeffrey Epstein in 2005. I mean, Lutnick even went further, telling the New York Post not only that he made the decision to never see Epstein after that, but that he, in fact, never did see Epstein after that.
I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Yeah, he is gross. But again, that was Lutnick just 4 months ago, saying that he was never even in a room with Epstein, not socially, not for business, not even philanthropy. Then in this latest batch of Epstein files, well, we got this. This is an email from Howard Lutnick to Jeffrey Epstein from December 19, 2012. And yes, if you're doing the math, it is 7 years after Lutnick claims to have cut Epstein out socially, to have been disgusted by him, to think he's gross, in which Lutnick arranged to have lunch with Epstein on Epstein's private island, saying, quote, "Hi, Jeff. We are landing in St. Thomas early Saturday afternoon. Where are you located? What is the exact location for my captain? Does Sunday evening for dinner sound good? I have another couple with me on my boat. Each of us has 4 children, 2 16-year-olds, 2 14-year-olds, a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, and 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. Thanks, Howard." Epstein then replied, quote, "Come Saturday or Sunday for lunch, question mark, and gave the exact location of his island. To which Lutnick replied, "Okay, lunch on Sunday, see you then." Now, I don't know if Howard Lutnick does not include an island as being in the same room as him, but that is quite a stretch. That all seems pretty social to me. Now, when the New York Times confronted Lutnick about the existence of those emails, Lutnick said he could not comment on the island visit because he had not seen the latest Epstein documents. Now, that wasn't exactly the question, was it? I'm guessing anyone would remember taking their family to an island with a known predator, I would think. Lutnick told the Times, quote, "I spent 0 time with him," and then Lutnick hung up on the reporter. Now, today, Senator Chris Van Hollen held Lutnick's feet a little closer to the fire, much closer, asking him about the island visit while Lutnick was testifying to the Senate. And this time, Secretary Lutnick seemed to remember a lot more about that trip.
Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island.
Again, there's a lot to unpack there. Taking your children to the island with Jeffrey Epstein and nannies, lots, but we don't have time for that. But again, it's not a crime to have lunch with someone, no matter how terrible they are. It's not even a crime to lie to the press. But why was Howard Lutnick lying? Why was he so emphatically denying he had any relationship at all with Jeffrey Epstein when he clearly did have a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? In England, Jeffrey Epstein is so toxic that the literal King of England is telling the police he will help them investigate his own brother. The Prime Minister is fighting for his job because he appointed someone with Epstein ties to be his ambassador to the United States. And that guy, the former ambassador to the U.S. who allegedly used his position as the British equivalent of a commerce secretary to tip off Jeffrey Epstein about major financial deals, that guy is under criminal investigation. That's how England is responding to revelations about their rich and powerful in these new files. Here's how Trump's White House spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, responded to a question about Howard Lutnick today. She was asked simply if there has been any shift in how the White House is viewing Secretary Lutnick after the revelations of his ties to Epstein. Not a hard one. Here was the response.
No, Secretary Lutnick remains a very important member of President Trump's team, and the president fully supports the secretary.
He does? I mean, sometimes saying fully support is a death knell, but I don't think it sounded like that there. The Trump administration is trying to just sweep all of this under the rug. And I don't just mean the mystery of why Howard Lutnick was lying about his ties to Epstein. I mean all of it, the Epstein files altogether. Yesterday, members of Congress finally got to see what the Department of Justice was claiming were the complete unredacted files. Democrat Ro Khanna and Republican Thomas Massie have been some of the members spearheading the fight to release the Epstein files for a while now. And they were some of the first to go down to the Department of Justice themselves to look at those supposedly unredacted files. And here's how Congressman Khanna described that visit.
We spent about 2 hours there, and we learned that 70 to 80% of the files are still redacted. In fact, there were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason.
Now, after uncovering those 6 names, Congressman Khanna then used his speech and debate privileges, which protect him from being sued over anything he says on the House floor, to name some names.
These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Mikaladze, Leopig Leonor, Nicola Caputa, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World, and billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner, who was labeled as a co-conspirator by the FBI. Now, my question is, why did it take Thomas Massie and me going to the Justice Department to get these 6 men's identities to become public? And if we found 6 men that they were hiding in 2 hours, imagine how many men they are covering up for in those 3 million files.
MS now is trying to reach all 6 of the men Congressman Khanna named for a response. So far, only Les Wexner's legal representative has replied, saying he was a, quote, source of information about Epstein and was not a target in any respect. Okay, there's still a lot of questions there. As for the other men, we have not heard back. And to be abundantly clear, we at MS Now have no information to confirm any allegations of wrongdoing by any of them. But as Congressman Khanna pointed out, those were just the 6 names they found in a few hours, 2 hours of digging. And Khanna claims there's a lot more digging still to be done.